Hi, creative friends. This is Soraya, and thank you so much for being here. It is a cold, rainy day outside, and it's the perfect time for a hot cup of tea and a meeting at the fireside with Dr. Clarissa Pinkola, SDs. So, today I want to talk about the wild woman archetype. What feeds her, nourishes her, and allows her to bloom, and also the things that subvert her and kill her off. So, first of all, I just want to reiterate that the wild woman archetype, like all archetypes, is a gender neutral concept. So, this archetype is accessible to anybody. And let us get into defining what a wild woman is. So, according to Dr. Estes, a wild woman is life, death, and everything in between. And I know that sounds really esoteric. Like, what does that even mean? But what I take it to mean is that everything that is within the realm of human experience is totally fodder and food for wild woman. And even when it's in the shadow aspects, wild woman can take these things and she can transmute them. And that is her work, really, because according to Dr. Estes, the work of wild woman is creation, invention, and reinvention. So we take all these things that are, um, you know, in the shadow aspects of our psyche, and we transmute them into the lighter aspects. And in this way, wild woman does the work um, of al- alchemizing. I mean, that's basically what we're talking about. So let's let's get into the description of what wild woman is. She is a sparkle in your eye when you get an idea. She is big and bold and kind and loving and graceful. She is beautiful and full of herself in all the best ways. She is a bad bitch and she's also kind and loving and generous. um, she is so many things, but we have to feed her, we have to nourish her. Otherwise, she is going to go into hiding. And I can just tell you that for myself in my own personal life, for most of my life, wild woman was subverted. And I was operating from a very shadow aspect of wild woman. So, okay, first of all, let me just say that I do have some notes that I have written down. So if I glance down occasionally, that is why. And the reason why I did that is because if I don't, I will talk incessantly and this video will go on for 5 hours. I'll go off on all these tangents and I'll forget about what I'm talking about. And there are some very important points I want to make. So I'm going to break down the video where I talk about the things that nourish and feed wild women, the things that subvert and killed wild women. And then at the end, I am going to talk about a person that, in my opinion, exemplifies the wild woman archetype. And it might be a bit surprising about who this person is. So anyways, okay, so what feeds and nourishes wild woman? Okay, the very first thing is creative expression. It could be painting or writing or poetry, but it doesn't have to be. It could be creating a family, or creating a garden, or creating a community. I mean, there's a million ways to create. And creation and creativity is totally a way that we can feed and nourish wild women. Okay, connection to nature and our bodies. When we are disassociated from nature and or our bodies, that is a surefire way to make wild women go into hiding. Um, the um, the main thing I think to understand is that when we are in healthy connection with our bodies, we are feeding a part of ourselves that the overculture has tried to control. And what I mean by that is, I'm trying to see how I can say this without being offensive. Um, I'm, oh boy, okay, deep breath. Okay. We are living in a time where in a lot of different countries and even in Western cultures, patriarchy is really trying to control women's bodies. And um, that is such a violation of wild women because our bodies belong to ourselves. They are not in the realm of patriarchy, society, governments, etc. Our bodies are our own to manage, to care for, to make decisions about. And um, to get away from that is to get further and further into patriarchy and into the shadow aspects of wild woman. Okay, so let's get into other ways to nourish wild women. Rest, 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 rest. We have to um, allow our bodies a chance to replenish, rejuvenate. The whole, just constantly doing and accomplishing and go, 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 these are all negative aspects of the overculture of patriarchy, but this does not feed wild women at all. We need to rest. Embracing our emotional connection and vulnerability, we have to create safe spaces within ourselves and within our psyche and within our environments so that we can show up authentically, that we don't always have to have our guard up. Because for me, for example, I'm just going to use an example from my life. I grew up in a family that was extremely toxic, extremely patriarchal, and very, very dysfunctional, full of whew, personality disorders, toxic patriarchy. I could go on and on. I'm going to try to rein this in. And I was not allowed to show my emotions. Now, when it comes to emotions, we need to ask ourselves, um, not only are we allowed to express our emotions, but who is allowed to express their emotions and what emotions are they allowed to express? And let me explain what I mean. So, in toxic patriarchy, only certain people can express their emotions, and generally, it's men that can express feelings of anger. But women and children are not allowed to express feelings of anger. If they do, in some cultures, they can be killed, ostracized, raped. I mean, there's just a host of bad things that can happen just because women are expressing an emotion like anger. Like I know in Indian culture, for example, women are not generally allowed to do that. So we have to ask ourselves, how are emotions valued or devalued in a patriarchal culture? And I'm sure we've all been privy to those conversations, whether it's at work or families or friend circles or whatever, where somebody will say, oh, she's just super emotional right now because it's her time of month. And snicker, laugh, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, whatever. And basically, it's a way of completely debasing a woman's value and worth, and lumping emotions with intuition, and just devaluing it. And that is a really toxic environment. And to be in a continued state of that, of that as a way of being, is definitely going to subvert wild women, because you have to cut off parts of yourself if you can't fully be yourself. You can't be in alignment with who you are. You're constantly on guard. You're constantly on edge. You can't express yourself emotionally in the entirety of human experience. And I'm not talking about flying into a rage and throwing things to express anger, but I'm just talking about, just expressing anger in a healthy way. In a lot of cultures, women are not given that um, luxury, and it shouldn't be a luxury, but it is. So, anyways, um, okay, another way that we can nourish our wild woman archetype is by sacred rituals. And this is going to, that's a very personal choice about, different rituals that you might have. I mean, for somebody, it might be taking a hot bath, or, lighting a candle, or, going for a walk. I mean, there are so many different rituals that people can do. So, but these things, they're symbolic. That's what a ritual is. It's speaking in the language of dreams and symbolism and archetypes, because archetypes speak in symbolism. That's the imagery of archetypes. So when we might think it's a really small thing, I'm just I'm lighting a candle before I paint, or um, whatever your ritual might be. But these are really rich, vibrant symbols that we are now sending a message to wild women. I see you, I honor you, I value you, I respect you, I'm giving you space to show yourself in my life. Um, and these are very, very powerful. I don't want to um, I, I don't want to like gloss over it. It's not some silly little thing that we do. Sacred ritual is the language of wild women, and it's really, really important. And the patriarchy and overculture tends to diminish these things as, oh, like it's so silly. It's, again, trying to debase, devalue. So when we reclaim these things, we can slowly start nourishing and feeding wild women. So the next thing is authentic relationships. Super, 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 super important, because if we don't have authentic relationships, we cannot create a safe space for us internally and our surroundings. So it's really important that we have authentic relationships that can hold space for us to be as we are, to show up as we are, to know that we are loved, we are cared for, we are valued, we are nourished. um hey Maxi boy, sit down, boy, sit down, come on. Maxi's doing yoga. Anyways, okay, the next thing is adventure and exploration. Now, this does not have to be travel. It can be travel, but what it means is to be expansive in your mind, to not get stuck into one way of being and thinking to the point where we're rigid and we don't allow new ways of being to come into our reality as a possibility. So, adventure and exploration is a really, really important component of allowing wild women to bloom. Um, the next one is to honor the feminine. In patriarchal culture, the feminine is devalued. Um, so many things about being female is, I mean, I don't even have to go into all the negative connotations about being female. A hag, a witch, a bitch. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But when we choose to honor the feminine, we are feeding wild women. We are saying, I see you, I respect you, I love you, I care for you, I value you. The next thing is to speak our truth and set boundaries. Oh my God, so important. I was the poster child for most of my life for not being able to set boundaries, for not knowing, for being misaligned, etc., etc. But this is super, super important, um, to be able to stand in our truth. And this comes from being in alignment. When our belief system matches our emotion, we can speak our truth. We can operate from the throat chakra, and we can now stand in our truth, speak our boundaries. We can be who we are, show up as we are. Okay, another way that we invite wild women into our lives is discernment. Oh my God, super, super important. Discernment, discernment, discernment. Um, so, what that means is we have to be discerning about who we allow into our space, what we allow into our space, the beliefs we allow into our space, the energies we allow into our space. We have to be discerning. It's not like, oh, somebody just wants to show up in our lives and we're like, okay, because we just have no discernment. We don't have we don't value ourselves. We don't have the alignment, and discernment is so, so supremely important. Once we become discerning, wild women feel safe to get stronger and bolder and sweeter and more of herself because she feels safe. um, The next one is to embrace change. I am the I will be the first one to say that when I was younger, I would be kicking and screaming on my way to change. But change is the one constant in life. And when we learn how to embrace change, we are moving with the flow of life. We're not like in resistance to life. And when we're in resistance to life, we are in resistance to wild woman. So now let's talk about the negative um, things that we can do, whether it's willingly or unwillingly, that cause us to be in the shadow self of wild women. The first thing is suppressing our emotions. I grew up, like I mentioned, in a family where I could not express myself. I couldn't express my emotions. It's not because I couldn't articulate myself. Well, I mean, when I was a child, I couldn't, but as I grew up, even and went on into adult relationships, I had a blueprint of I can't express my emotions because they're going to be used against me. They're going to, somebody's going to get mad at me. Somebody's going to reject me, abandon me, blah 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 blah. Because that was my experience. But if we constantly do this, if we have a pattern of over years and years and decades and lifetimes really of not expressing our emotions, we are now going to have to cut off parts of ourselves. So, yeah, Wild Woman is going to, she's going to be subverted. She's going to go into hiding. Um, the next thing is people pleasing. Oh my goodness, people pleasing. People pleasing is doormat energy. It's just like, hey, it's all about what can I do to please everybody else? I shouldn't even have any needs, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a way girls are socialized in so many cultures and even Western culture, even present day. I mean, the good girl, the whole, oh, be a good girl. Oh, she's such a good girl. Oh, you're being such a good girl because blah, 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 blah. Okay. I think we all can, I mean, I don't really have to go into that too much. So, constant people pleasing, people pleasing, people pleasing, um, overly sacrificing ourselves over years and years, staying in toxic relationships. These can all lead wild women to die over decades. Wild woman is not going to be able to breathe. Um, a rigidity to roles and beliefs and rules is going to kill off wild women, because when um, we're so entrenched in a belief system, we have allegiance over a belief system rather than over a human being, a live person, whether that live person is ourselves or somebody else. When we are so um, kind of caged into certain beliefs and the role that we have to play, because a role is not authentic. Um, a role is something that we're playing. So we're not in alignment with who we are. Over time and over years and decades, this can and will kill off wild women. Another thing is repressing our sexuality or using our sexuality to manipulate others. Both of these can cause wild women to be subverted. And a lot of religions and cultures do this. Um, I know in Indian culture, for instance, women are not supposed to allowed to be sensual or sexual in any kind of a healthy way. And it's just a very repressive society on women. Um, when we are constantly in toxic self-doubt and insecurity, I'm not talking about just I mean, we're all human beings, so of course sometimes we are going to have self-doubt, we are going to have insecurity, but when we have toxic self doubt and insecurity, we are now operating from a space of lack. And now we want to go out and dominate. We want to control. Might is right. I'm the adult, so, what I say goes. I'm the man, so what I say goes, blah, blah, blah. So, all of these things are going to cause wild woman to get to fade away, to get weaker and weaker. And um, another thing is a fear of change. When we fear change so much that we bend ourselves and we try to make circumstances fit that just don't fit anymore. We just don't belong there anymore, and we just fight and try to stay in places that are not conducive to our growth. Then you know this is a very toxic environment for wild women. um, when we are cut off from our bodies, when we are cut off um, from nature, these are all things that are negatives for the growth of the wild woman archetype. So I said that I was going to talk about somebody who I know deep down in my bones exemplifies wild woman. And it might be surprising to you, but the person I'm talking about is Nelson Mandela. He is the embodiment of the wild woman archetype. So I was born in apartheid South Africa. I'm 55 years old. And when I was a kid, Nelson Mandela was in prison, and he was there for 27 years. So I think I mentioned this in another video. So, he was a prince. He was a tribal leader, and he was downloaded with all these beliefs that were really empowering, and they served him. They served his life. They served his community. And let us ask ourselves, how was Nelson Mandela? And I know that, he's one person, but he was the leader. He wasn't the only person. There were, tons of other people that, gave their lives to ending apartheid. But Nelson Mandela was the leader. And how was he able to negotiate with the Nazis? Because that's what the Boers were. They were Nazis. They believed everything that Nazis believed in. Um, they, um, they had all the plans in place for genocide. They were Nazis. So how did Nelson Mandela not only negotiate with them, but win? Well, he was in his wild woman archetype. He believed in negotiating. He believed in understanding your opponent. When he was in prison, he learned how to read and write Afrikaans fluently. And in that way, he was getting to know his opponent. He believed that forgiveness was a strength, not a weakness. And even when he was young, he always had the belief that even though he was fighting against somebody and he had an opponent, he was not going to rob them of their humanity. He was not going to dehumanize them. He was going to allow them to have their dignity. And because he had his dignity, because he was in his wild woman archetype. And he believed in Ubuntu, which is the African proverb which states, I am because we are. So, what does that mean? It means that you believe in repairing relationships, you believe in forgiveness, you forgive in deterrence, not conflict, you believe in apology, you believe in community. These are all wild women values. These are this is what makes us human. And when you take leaders that are not operating from this perspective of emotion, intuition, imagination, when they're not embodying that heart centered leadership, that wild woman archetype, um, you have leaders that are depraved, and all they care about is winning at any cost. It's I mean, Nelson Mandela, when he was in prison, I mean, he was on Robben Island. He wasn't a young man. He was there for 27 years. Robben Island is a horrific place. They were routinely tortured. It was freezing cold. He had arthritis. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible place. And he was there for, I mean, almost 30 years. And, routinely, the South African government would offer him um, his freedom. And they would say, we'll give you all the money you need. We'll give you a house, and you can live the rest of your days in peace. You can be with your family, and you will never have to work a day in your life. All you have to do is stay out of politics. Just don't get involved in politics. And he was on Robben Island, and he always refused. He always refused. He didn't even think about it. I mean, how many people could do that, could say that? Can we point to any world leader today that has an ounce of courage? I mean, it's, but Nelson Mandela, he he didn't even, what he was in alignment with himself. He was in alignment with his heart, with his values, with his beliefs, with everything, with his integrity. He always said no. He said no. Um, he wasn't going to give up the fight for justice, the fight for equality. That this is wild women. This is how he was. I mean, years from now, people are still going to be trying to figure out, like, did Nelson Mandela do what he did? He was a master negotiator. He was a master leader. I mean, I think there's a class at Harvard that teaches, leadership, um, like lessons that we can learn from Mandela. Well, he was in his wild woman archetype, because these are all the values of wild women. That's my 2 cents, and I'm going to stick with it. As always, I appreciate your comments and your concerns. I appreciate your feedback. And thank you so much if you've watched all the way to the end. I hope I wasn't rambling too much. I did try to stick to my notes. I probably got off track a little bit, but it's all good. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.